What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm here to look ahead to the PFL Europe 4 2024 finale, which goes down in the LDCL Arena in Lyon, France on December 14th, 2024. And obviously it's the culmination of the season of the PFL Europe, which has been very, very interesting. We've had some of, I suppose, the people you would want to see coming through, the top prospects coming through. We've had a couple of shocks along the way as well, a couple of top performances, and an interesting card, I suppose, here to finish it off. It comes a couple of weeks after we had the end of the PFL MENA season, which obviously was the first PFL MENA season, which I think, someone who's covered all of these so far, last year's PFL Europe was amazing. This year's PFL MENA was a real hit, I thought. And one of those years that the PFL would have absolutely dreamed of, I think. A few stars emerged, a few real good fighters emerged, a few fighters that, like, if you saw them in the PFL Global next year, you would be very, very happy. And what we have here on PFL Europe is probably also a couple of them, depending on how the results go and depending, I suppose, on how the performances go as well. But I think the matchmaking on PFL MENA was fantastic. The matchmaking on PFL Europe as well has been very, very good. I spoke at the start of the year, and we'll probably do a yearly recap on this in a couple of weeks' time around the Christmas. But I think what they have achieved here with the PFL Europe, PFL MENA, has been really good. Like the PFL MENA PFL Europe coming in this year, there was a thought, like, would it be the same as last year, where it was like prospects coming through, or would the fact that they had coupled up with Bellator obviously mean that, say, let's say people like, I don't know, let's just show like a James Gallagher out there, or someone like that who's been around for a long time, who's like 3 or 4, maybe 2 or 3 fights away from a title shot. Would guys like that be in it, or would it be the younger guys who are like 4-0, 5-0, 6-0? And to be honest, what we had was, I suppose, a little bit of a combination. And looking at the final four, it probably worked out as well for them as possible. A little bit like the PFL MENA ones, where the prospects actually coming through won out, and some of the, more, and there was no, I suppose, there was no one like on the verge of a Bellator title shot in it, let's say that. But the more experienced people, I suppose, did get beaten, and the young up-and-comers got through, and that's, I think, exactly what you want out of this. So that's a good job, I suppose, for everybody and by everybody there as well. So I'm very interested to see what it's going to look like next year. I think PFL MENA almost makes itself. I think, like, there's maybe, apart from Ali Taleb, I think you can nearly put all the PFL MENA winners and maybe finalists even back in next year, get a couple more to make it a little bit different, and you're good to go again. Whereas I think with this one, again, we'll enter next year, and I'll be very interested to see who is back in it, who isn't back in it, and who is in it next year that wasn't in it this year. Let's put it that way. What level of fighters are going to be in it? Like, there's a lot of, especially like Irish fighters, like the Dara Kelly's, your Nathan Kelly's, your Kieran Clark's, the likes of people like that. I'd be very interested to see, and even up to the likes of James Gallagher and some of the crew over in England. I'd be very, very interested to see what way this will be made next year. Even, like, say, the likes of some of the people recently who've been out, like Higo and others like that. I would wonder, and obviously not in the Europe, but in the different in the different promotions, where they will be and where they will be placed. And again, that's probably a chat for another day. But let's get into this and let's talk about this card. I'm gonna concentrate mostly on the top 5 fights here, so that the 4 title fights, and in the main event as well, which is a very, very interesting fight. And I'll start with that. I'll start with the main event. So in that main event, we have Abdurrahimov, the Lazy King, against Leandro Staropoli, which I suppose is when Cedric Doumbé is not on this card, I suppose the Lazy King is the guy you would want headlining it, and I was a little bit surprised because I remember I'm looking back at my predictions for the year, and I'm a little bit surprised that Lazy King wasn't in either a European season or a world season. Now, you'd have to be very surprised if that doesn't change next year. But at the same time, the Lazy King and Cedric Doumbé are such kind of stars, I suppose. In France, do you want to put him in a place where the promotion isn't going to bring an event in that part of the promotion to France? So I don't know, I suppose it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. You could say the same for a lot of the Irish fighters. Look at Dakota Ditcheva now as well. But anyway, I suppose, again, that's a chat for another day. But look, the Lazy King, I suppose we all, if you're a fan of MMA, you probably know about the Lazy King a little bit now. But he's 20 fights deep in his career, 18-1 with one no contest, 12 submissions in there as well, and 2 knockouts, so only gone to decision 4 times. The only guy to beat him is Jalal Al-Shalawi, who we saw in PFL MENA this year, who was one of the guys, the more experienced guys to lose and not get through. He also had a no contest with George Aid, who was also in PFL MENA and got through to the end of it. So there's a lot of crossover here, I suppose. And another, I suppose, again, part of the reason why maybe it's a little bit shocking is not the word, but surprising that he's not in one of these tournaments. Like some of the guys who he's beaten, like Rafael Hartak, who is at the moment over in KSW doing really good things, and he's the champion over in KSW, and he's a win over him. He's beaten Lewis Glissman, Brad Wheeler and Jack Grant, and the last two have been around for a very, very long time as well. And he also has a win over Jalal Shalawi, who came back to beat him that time. So he's faced some very, very good lads down through the years. And the same can be said for Sarapolu, who's 31 now, 13-6. His last fight was against Murad Ramazanov, the Formula 1 champion, who was in obviously the PFL season this year until he came up, the PFL Global season, until he came up against Musayev, and he beat Staropoli this year in the PFL regular season. Staropoli was on a 4-fight win streak before that. Watched back his fight against Baba and Jumbe, and it was very impressive there. It was a tough fight because there was a lot of hard wrestling and a lot to come through, I suppose, in that fight. But before that, he'd beaten Miguel Lebu, Leandro Diamani, and Carl Booth, and before in his career, obviously he's fought in the UFC as well against Roman Dolidze, Tim Means, Muslim Salikov, beat Thiago Alves in the UFC as well, and had a good few wins before he even got to the UFC. So this is a guy who's been around for a very long time and has a lot of experience, and will bring something, I suppose, to the Lazy King that he will have to deal with. So going back watching some of Staropoli's fights, he's a pressure fighter. He wants to trade. He wants to, and it's funny. There's a lot of these sort of fighters on this card. The pressure counter fighters, I like to call them. They push you back, and they want you to counter them so they can counter you, which is, I was going to say a new thing. It's not necessarily that new to MMA, but it's a yardstick type of way of fighting that has been, more prevalent in the last 6 or 7 years than it ever was before. And Staropoli's definitely one of those guys. And he's the kind of maybe not short, but looks shorter, kind of squat guy with not the fastest or the best athlete in the world, but he can hit hard when he needs to. Hit, and he's also there to be hit at times as well. And when you play that game of the offensive counter striker, and maybe you're not the fastest guy in the world, that sometimes it leads you to be the one who takes the counters rather than is landing them. So that's a bit of an issue for him. Now, the Lazy King, he got the name. Why did he get the name? Because he's a bit of a kind of a slow striker too, but I think it's more designedly for the Lazy King than anything else. He shows lovely low kicks, which I think will be a big part of this fight if it stays on the feet for a long time. That last fight I mentioned with Staropoli, he took a lot of leg kicks, and I think the Lazy King will probably land a few leg kicks in him, but I think the Lazy King will be trying to get this fight to the ground as quickly as possible, as noted, with all those submissions he has on his ledger from before, and I think that is the way forward, probably against Staropoli as well. Allow him to come into you, get that clinch and get those trips. He's brilliant trips. They're just so smooth and so good, and as lazy as he looks on the standing, I suppose he looks as comfortable on the ground, so comfortable, gets the back so quickly. Rear naked choked very, very quickly as well. So, the only thing I would say about the Lazy King is there have been certain fights, it was the Hartic fight, wasn't it, where he came back and he was losing that, and then he came back and he won in the 5th round, and he had a bit of trouble against Jack Grant at times as well. He is beatable. There's no doubt about it. He hasn't been beaten a very long time, look, but he is beatable. Will Sarapoli be the guy to beat him? I would be very surprised if he was, to be honest. So I think the Lazy King will end up getting the takedown and probably getting the submission pretty quickly in this one. After that, on the card here, anyway, maybe this is not official yet, but there's a fight between Patrick Habiora and Catalin Safta, and they've been doing this a lot recently. The PFL, we saw it in the Mina fight with the amateur ladies fight, and that was pretty good. And I think this is another kind of showcase one here for Habiora. He's fought in Aries, obviously, which is a French-based promotion as well, and he looked good there. He beat Claudio Pasella, who's also on this card, and that was in the PFL Europe earlier on in the year. So he only made his debut this year. I think, was there an injury or something in there, or was it maybe it was just a showcase fight as well? But he's one of these guys who fought a lot in the IMAFs and had a lot of success there for a very, very long time. So again, one of those guys coming through who you look at as one of the Makayev type of fighters with so many amateur fights, and when he comes into the pros, he's going to be hard work for anyone. And he's looked really, really good so far. 3 out of 4 fights, very, very early finishes, and Safta, from the bits and pieces I watched of him today, he doesn't look like a bad fighter at all. He's well able to take a shot. He's gone long. He's more experienced, in terms of the profession. He's had a few amateur fights as well, but not near the same as Patrick. And you would expect maybe with Patrick got the hands going, he's an all-round fighter as well, that he will end up winning that one. But that's one of kind of, I suppose, the showcase fights in there. The welterweight matchup. Let's talk about that first. Between Daniele Micheli and Farim Zindeli. And I suppose at the start of the year, if you looked at it now, as I said, we'll recap that in a couple of weeks' time. Maybe these are 2 lads you wouldn't have picked out, coming into start a poll. Micheli is 37 years of age, 13-5 and 1 no contest, and I suppose he has gotten big spots in the past, and maybe it hasn't always worked out for him. Even that Peter Queally fight, it was a no contest because of the Peter Queally got a very bad cut in his eye, but he got into the PFL Europe this year and he won his 2 fights and looked good in them. Got 2 very, very quick finishes, 1 submission and 1 knockout. And before that, he was one of these lads who was on these, he'd fought in Bellator, lost to Daniele Scatizzi, fought in Venator, ended up losing over there. He won a couple of fights there as well, but you're kind of just thinking, would he go to that next level? And it looks like this year he definitely has. And Zindeli, I suppose, is a bit newer in his career, 7-1-1. The last 2 fights have been massive standouts, I suppose. When you beat Jack Grant, as I mentioned earlier on, it means something, and he did that in beating Tommy Langowski as well. This is a guy, Langowski, who I mentioned in this show so many times because of the guys he has fought. He's fought so many of the guys on the PFL Europe and global, all different places. He's fought maybe guys whose names you wouldn't know offhand, but then you see it in there. Oh God, here's the next prospect coming through. The likes of Zindeli, but then also the likes of Daniel Conrad, or just loads of guys. Even as an amateur, he's had fights as well. And it's for Zindeli to have a matchup like that, and then a matchup like Jack Grant as well, will serve him well, I think, in his career. He's fought Maurice Savetti as well, ended up losing that fight. I bet he one of the top fighters over in one championship over the last few years as well. So, some good names in that ledger so far. But the 2 of them as fighters, very, very interesting. Zindeli is green, I would say, long, good right hand, but not the most technical fighter in the world, but a good double leg and a wrestler. Looks way better on the floor than he does, I suppose, striking. Good takedown defense as well, which is needed, I suppose, at all levels. He was the fight, maybe people remember, he nearly got KO'd by Jack Grant, but then when the fight got to the ground, he looked very comfortable there, and he often does look very comfortable. And I think in this fight, it's one, if you're not getting the fight to the ground, you're going to be in big trouble. Michele, vicious leg kicks. It's funny, I watched one of his fights and he comes out and I was taking notes and I was like, okay, this guy's a southpaw, and then watching the rest of the fight, he's like, hold on, wait, he hasn't gone back. Wait, he's actually orthodox. He switches very effortlessly, I would say, but he's definitely a switch stand striker, definitely more of an orthodox striker, but switches an awful lot and can unphase you by starting as a southpaw as well, which I've seen in a couple of his fights. That's definitely a thing. But he's aggressive wrestling. His backhand is always cocked and ready. That Mane fight where he just touched him and put him out. It was frightening power. Like, even watching it, you're watching it live, you're like, what did he hit him with? Watching the replay, what did he hit him with? And then watching the other side replay, like, he just touched him. And a little bit like Anderson Silva, Forrest Griffin back in the day, or one of them, just barely touched him and he's gone. He's powerful, but in his punching, but strong as well. To steal a phrase from your guy Jimmy Smith, he's built like a fire hydrant. And we saw a guy kind of like him last week, Mohamed Shafi. Now, I think he's probably more powerful than Mohamed Shafi, but he's good cardio as well for a guy with that amount of power and that sort of body type. So Michele, I haven't seen the odds here or anything yet, but I think he would have to be favourite coming in here. I think Zindelli is going to have trouble getting this fight to the ground, and if he can't, I think Michele's game is just going to be a big problem for him. I think that power is going to be a massive issue for Zindelli, and he's right. As I said, Zindelli has a good right hand, and if he lands it on anyone, it could cause him trouble. But if you throw it too much, let's say you can't get the takedown, you start throwing it, a guy like Michele is just going to eat that up, and especially with the stand switching, because he'll either eat it up with a jab from one side, or he'll eat it up with like the counter as he comes inside. I could see a big counter left hook from fighting out of the orthodox position here, followed by maybe a straight left down the middle when he's fighting southpaw. Could be like well there for someone like Zindelli, especially for Michele, even especially if he gets Zindelli jabbing, which I don't think Zindelli will want to do. So it's an interesting matchup. The one thing I would say about Zindelli, I definitely favour Michele. Michele's the pick there. Zindelli has improved. I wrote down green here in my notes, and that was the first of probably 3 fights, and he looked less green in every single one of them, maybe. So this sort of thing as well, fighting regularly, preparing regularly, training regularly, can bring guys on, and I would be very interested to see if that is the case here with Zindelli. So I'm again picking Michele, but you could see a difference in Zindelli here. So interesting fight without a shadow of a doubt. But Michele's the pick there. The Lazy King is also the pick, and Habirora is the pick as well in the fights before that. Right. The next fight we're going to talk about is arguably the standout fight. Do you know what? All these title fights are very, very good, to be honest. But the lightweight fight between Conor Hughes and Jacob Kazuba is scintillating, to steal a phrase from one of our own Irish guys here. Nasty. Conor Hughes 10-1, Kazuba 13-0. Hughes is only lost to another Irishman, Dylan Duke, last year, who really frustrated him and took him down, and I think improved his game at the same time. Though he's come out this year, won one fight last year, but won 2 this year. Has also won his last 3 in a row and has looked good. Ignacio Capella in his last outing is a really talented guy, and he ended up beating him. But Kazuba is the one to beat here, 13-0, the champion from last year. He's beaten the who's who of PFL Europe, really. He's beaten Skitizi, Ken Musa, one of the guys I was talking about, who has been around, for a very long time. Beat John Mitchell, Dylan Tuke, Radon Maxim, and some top. Those are top wins at this level. Really, really, really top wins. For Hughes, watching a good bit of him there today before he did this. And I think he's improved so much, especially from the two fighting before it to now, night and day. You know, he's a good striker and a good wrestler on top. But I think the difference between him now is that high guard that he has is followed with combinations. You know, his combos are effective. They get you thinking. I know and the thing about and just to jump to Kasuba for a second, we'll jump back to Hughes, but Kasuba's also like a really good high guard combination guy. The only difference I would say between Kasuba and Hughes is and this is weird, it's a compliment but it doesn't sound like it. Kasuba is more how would you put it now? More regular, more normal. You'd see it more often the way Kasuba fights, but again, that's a compliment. Like Leon Edwards is like that, and Leon Edwards is one of the best fighters over the last 5 or 6 years in the world. So, Kasuba again, a very good wrestler, very good on top. That high guard again, combinations, great level changer. But the one thing I would say, his combinations, they often lead to clinches, and which is a little bit different from Hughes. But the clinch is where he gets a lot of his takedowns. Whereas Hughes on the other side of it then, again, has improved an awful lot. Good wrestler, good power, kind of the open stance that he switches an awful lot, throws a lot of head kicks, fights very tall, which is a big difference between him and Kasuba. More light on his feet now than he ever was, I think. Again, those head kicks, that front leg head kick that he throws as well. He's one of those guys, he's maybe another Lazy King. Relaxed striker, kind of slow moving, but when he strikes, he's like a snake. And he pounces in there and he lands I was watching one of his fights and he landed a body shot, just banged in a body shot. It was absolutely beautiful, but you'd never have guessed it by the motion of him 5 seconds, 10 seconds before that. Slow, and then pop straight away. And then he put out my back there doing that. But, that's the way Conor Hughes is. And I think more so now, as I said, than ever. I wouldn't say he's the most natural striker in the world, but he's getting there. And I feel like the put together game is very effective for Hughes, and the more natural it becomes, the better it'll become. Now, the one thing I would say is, because of that, I think he has to think about it a little bit, which leaves himself open to getting taken down. Was it the Capella fight? I've watched so many fights in the last 3 hours that I'm getting them mixed up. But there was one of the fights he got. There was a big takedown against him, and it was because he got too inclined to strike. If that happens here, Kasuba will 100% take him down. Without a shadow of a doubt, Kasuba will take him down. So it's a very interesting one, right? Because if I was watching these lads, based on the tape I watched today, I would almost certainly say, Conor Hughes is a more talented, well-rounded fighter. He also probably has the more holes in his game, but, you can maybe look past them. But one thing you have to learn in MMA is that doesn't always add up to victory. Sometimes, and Leon Edwards is always the one I use. Leon Edwards is not the most outstanding fighter in the world. But you know what Leon Edwards is? He's not outstandingly bad in any area. He's actually outstandingly good in every area. Is he great in every area? No. Is he great in any area? Some areas, right? But to be really good in every area at all things, that's very hard to be, right? And it wins you titles sometimes. And I think that's what Kasuba is. I think that's what he is. To look at him, he doesn't, you'd have to look at him many times and you have to realize who he has beaten, what he has achieved. And Conor Hughes is going to have to do a lot to take that down. So, honestly, I don't know. It's not that I was going to say the heart says one way, the head says the other way. It's almost the head is telling me both ways. Because the study I did today says Hughes, but then the knowledge of what has already happened says Kasuba. I don't know. Maybe we'll wait till the betting show for that one. Can I pick the draw? I'll pick the draw on that one, and I'll revisit it on the betting show. But great fight, very, very fun. I think. Look, what would the key to it be? I think if whoever controls the ground game, I think will have a big chance of winning this. And what I mean by that is, if Hughes gets on top, I think he will have a real chance of winning. I think if Kasuba gets on top, he will have a real chance of winning. And not just getting on top, but staying on top and controlling on top. If it lands on the feet, I think it'll be very even, because Kasuba's, again, he's very hard to hit and very hard to beat. Look, this is probably going to a decision. This is probably going to be very close, and I can't wait to see it. Very interesting fight. The next title fight we have then is the one I think everyone wants to watch after the last card, Alexander Luster against Lewis McGrillen-Evans. Look, as we stand here, I'm recording this on the, what date is it, the 4th. Now, there's a few more fights to be had this year, but Lewis McGrillen-Evans versus Dean Garnett, as we stand right now, that's fight of the year, without a shadow of a doubt. A rock'em, sock'em robots. It was one of those cards that it was me and about 3 more people online watching it, because it was early, and obviously a lot of the American crew watched it later on and got wind of it then. But we were like, how people need to watch this. This is fight of the year. Oh my God. Unbelievable. And on the same night, Alexander Luster came in and he just destroyed Julian Lopez and looked brilliant doing it as well. And it just looked so like technical and just all around great. Looks so good, and the two of them, you know, the two of them faced off, and it was an epic face off as well. And I think afterwards, I'm like, there's no fight this year I'm looking forward to more than this. And honestly, in terms of the PFL and Bellator and all, I think it might be the one. This is just an all. I'd say to anyone, go back and watch the Luster fight first, then go back and watch the McGrillen-Evans fight. And then you'll be bang up for this one. Bang up for it. So just to run through, I suppose, both of them, what they're like. Luster has a very good jab, heavy leg kicks. He can be taken down, though. That's one of those things, you know, maybe sometimes we get caught up in the most recent fights, but in past fights, well, he can be taken down. But very dangerous jiu-jitsu. Very, very dangerous. Just look at his record here. He has 5 submissions, 4 knockouts. He's finished every one of his wins. But so dangerous. Attacks from the bottom, goes for legs and triangles and the whole lot. But he's power in his hands as well when on the feet. But again on the ground, he takes the back just so fast. And but everywhere. Sometimes guys look very comfortable on the ground or look very comfortable standing. Maybe not both. He looks very comfortable in all phases. And when anyone throws a jab the way he throws the jab, it's beautiful to me. Beautiful. And McGrillen-Evans, I think, is more... He's more your, how would you put it? If you like your Diego Sanchez's or your Gilbert Melendez's or, your Darren Elkins, he's the one for you. He's a southpaw who throws feints, but I feel like the feints are more for him than his opponent, because he does get countered an awful lot, but when he throws that left hand, he just bombs it in there. Again, a pressure counter fighter like we spoke about earlier. But he's one of those guys as well. Like, I think his team kind of have to hold him back a little bit and go, here, don't, like a horse, pulling back the reins. Don't let it go yet or you're going to wear yourself out. But he's more comfortable in the madness than he is feinting and waiting and holding back. Because when someone counters him and he counters them and they counter, that's when he'll get knocked down, he'll knock someone down himself, but it's where he shines. It's where he's absolutely brilliant. Becomes a tad predictable. Although, listen to the commentary, he does change things up, but maybe not as much maybe as he should when he throws as many strikes as he does. But yeah, look, he's such a fun fighter. When he gets pushed back, I think he's wide open. But very, very strong. You look at the muscles on his back and everything. Likes a takedown himself as well. He's not afraid to fight on the ground. So, look, I think if you're Luster and if you're McGrillen-Evans, what you want to do is push your opponent back. Both of them want to do it. I think Luster will want to get that jab going, put McGrillen-Evans on the back foot, and then land those big shots behind it. I think if you're McGrillen-Evans, what you want to do is, again, your feints, throw your big left hand. Hopefully you land it before they do, and even if they land again, you land the third one, and hopefully that's better than the first 2 that landed. And that's it. That is it. I think Luster, if he gets taken down, he'll go to try to fight in the ground, but I think he'd be happy to stand with McGrill and Evans. This fight will end up in the ground, though. I would nearly be assured of that, because someone will get knocked down, someone will fall down, unless there's an early finish, obviously. This will end up on the ground, and I'd be very interested to see who has the upper hand in, because Luster looks so good on the ground. But McGrill and Evans is heavy as well, and he's no joke with his jiu-jitsu or anything like that. So very, very interesting fight. I think I'm going to pick Luster, just based on, I think he's probably the more technical fighter, but if this turns into a war, it'll very quickly turn to McGrill and Evans' side, and we could have a real classic here. So cannot wait for that one. And then the last title fight, by no means least, is Valentina Skitisi against Paulina Wisniewska, 4-0 against 3-3. Wisniewska was supposed to fight against Chanel Dyer, who had beaten Skitisi last time up, but Chanel Dyer, I looked it up today, she got an infection in her knee, so couldn't fight. But I think a lot of people who watched that Skitisi-Dyer fight are maybe not a bit disappointed, but not massively disappointed. You know, Chanel Dyer was given all she could do by Skitisi in that fight. And I've watched obviously a lot of Skitisi. She fought in the PFL last year, PFL Europe, and there wasn't a whole lot of tape on her before this. She fought Loiseau to 3 rounds, and she fought Ditcheva as well. But this was the most competitive and the best, I suppose, tape out there on her, and she looked really, really good in this fight. Like, very aggressive, very strong. Lovely jab, lovely overhand right. Looked very comfortable in there as well. That step-in jab against Chanel Dyer was absolutely amazing. And she caused Chanel Dyer big issues in a fight which, I don't know, what was she? Probably a -800, 900 underdog. She very well could have won that fight. It was close. There was. Did she get a card? But let me just look here. Yeah, it was a split decision, so she did get a card. Very, very close fight. Very interesting as well. And look, as someone who's 3-3 in her career, she's lost to Chanel Dyer, Dakota Ditcheva, and in a fight, earlier on in her career, to Samantha Jean-Francois, where she came back and she beat Lizzie Jevers in the fight after that. She is one of those people who takes on all comers. Imagine to have fought some, people that good in the first 6 fights of your career. That is an awful, that's an awful lot of balls, to put it that way. And coming out of SBG as well, she's some great training with Danny McCormack there as well, with her D Begley, who obviously Wisniewska fought earlier on in the year and won. And funnily enough, her second fight, Wisniewska's second fight, was against Karolina Wojcik, who the aforementioned Danny McCormack fought for the Invicta title. So Wojcik, an Invicta title challenger. She and Wisniewska won that fight. That's no mean feat altogether. So very, very good win for her there. Paulina kicks from range, very athletic, big and tall, good takedowns, good in the clinch. Again, technical is the word for her. She can be taken down herself, and I think the big, tall nature of her would lead to that. But I think Skitisi is going to strike with her in the same way she struck with Dyer, who's a big and tall striker as well. And could you argue that Dyer is a better fighter than Wisniewska? I think you probably could. You probably would. And, if Skitisi goes out and fights the same way she did against Dyer, she'll probably win this fight, right? But it's very hard to replicate that. And especially, it's not, I don't think it's massively hard it is hard for Skitisi to replicate it, but it's very hard for her to replicate it when now someone knows what's coming, right? If that fight had never happened, and she produced that against Wisniewska would be like, oh, Jesus, where's this coming from? I didn't know she was this good. But now Wisniewska knows how good she is. You watch that fight and you can't help but say, Skitisi's 3-3, but that's not a real 3-3. She's not a 3-3 fighter. That's just completely incorrect. It's 3-3 and, records are for DJs type of thing, as Peter Queally would say. So, that to me leads to an intriguing fight. I think that tape being there maybe pushes it towards Wisniewska's favour. But again, a tremendous fight, and probably just about picking Wisniewska there. But again, let's see what the betting odds are later in the week, and we'll talk about that on the betting show. So those are all the big fights from PFL Europe. A couple of ones on the undercard there as well, just to maybe quickly hint at. Badar Medkouri is fighting Kakar Hamandi. Medkouri 7-2, and he's fighting out of France as well. He's won his last 3 in a row. He's fought a lot in UAE Warriors, and he's fought a couple of times in Aries as well. And Hamandi is 8-6. Again, another guy who's fought in some of the promotions around Europe, the Hex MMA promotion and things like that as well. It's I suppose a big step up for him, and I suppose that one is one for maybe Medkuri to win there. There's a one between Mehdi Sadi and Mahamio Capanella. Sadi 6-2 out of France as well. Again, another guy who's fought on UAE Warriors a good few times, and again, I think a lot of these guys, they maybe would want them to come in next year to the PFL Europe, and maybe this is kind of an audition for it. Campanella, there's no standout, I suppose, name on it or promotion on his ledger yet, but he's a lot of submissions in there, a lot of finishes. So that's what they're looking for. But the Owen Sheridan as well from SPG Ireland is on the card. He's fighting Bryce Bagali. A lot of big things about Owen. Fought a lot of amateurs as well, so definitely look out for him. But the standout fight in the undercard is without a shadow of a doubt Claudio Picella against Oscar Onzor. Picella is 4-2, but again, 4-2 doesn't really show where he is. He beat Mark Ewan last time out, who is one of the, to me, one of the best prospects in the world. And this was a massive, massive win for him. Before that, he'd fought Patrick Habirora, who we talked about earlier, who was on the main card showcase fight. He beat Alexander Yankov as well. Pacella's fighting out of SPG Ireland, so he's fought a lot. And fought in Europe Championship, which is a championship run by Decky McAleenan. So he's a good few wins there as well. So an exciting fighter, a good fighter, looked really, really good, as I said, against Mark Ewan, where he wasn't expected to win. He's fighting Oscar Onsworth, a guy who's been known, as I joked them, on the scene in the UK for a long time, 8-3-1, with a load of amateur fights as well. He's fought some really good guys, He fought Adam Cullen back in 2020. His last fight was against Alfie Davis, which is like a massive step up, I suppose, at that stage of his career in the last Belfast card. He's been in there with Lewis Monarch and beat him as well, beat Harry Davis, amongst others. And, he has a good few finishes as well, 4 knockouts in his career and a submission in there as well. So, Picella, I suppose, is the coming guy after that last win. But I think Onzor will put it up to him in that fight. But you'd have to pick Picella based on beating Mark Ewan. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So very, very interesting card, very fun card. The finale of PFL Europe goes down over in Lyon, France, December 14th, 2024. So, Sherdog will I almost said severe mid there. Sherdog will have you covered. Check it out, Sherdog.com, for all the results and everything like that. And I will be back after the card with a review as well, so please check that out here on YouTube. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.